Hi, welcome to the Macabre Emporium. Welcome back to Macabre Emporium, or welcome if it's your first episode that you're listening to. We're on episode 9 now.
Yep.
Yes, episode 8 was...
The end of Tony Kuritzis and...
What'd I do?
The
I don't
Cat's
remember. Oh, yes, the Kochi.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the Coochie.
Yeah, well, listen to last week's episode. You might want to go back, and because that'll make more sense to you if you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, I forgot what the fuck I was gonna say.
So if you're curious on what the hell my problem was in, previous episode, we had no idea that I was starting to have the onset of COVID at the time we recorded it.
Yeah.
So now I'm back off of death's door. I should sound normal again at this point. I hope so, at least.
To me, you sounded normal last time, too, so...
Oh,
I don't know.
But it was more of the scattered brain from the brain fog that decided to hold on to me.
Yeah, that was bad.
For longer than I was hoping, if at all, because I didn't really think we were going to get this episode out this week. I was afraid it was going to be our first time we were going to have to postpone an episode, and I don't want to do that.
I didn't think we were going to make it this week either. Here we are.
Yay!
You're welcome.
Back off of death's doorstep, and here we are.
Back at it and talking shit.
Yep. So what were your thoughts about the whole Tony Kuritzis story afterwards, now that you've had time to process it?
That case was bananas.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I had either seen that picture or heard of him from somewhere, because some of what you said sounded like I've heard it before.
Right.
But it could have been from you talking to yourself on the computer while you were doing research.
There was, even before we had started considering doing this podcast, there was like an 8-episode kind of fictionalized version of this. It was they had some liberties to it. It's actually fairly accurate. They kind of embellished the truth a little bit by having Tony Kuritzis call Fred Hickman. He never actually called Fred after he, because it was supposed to be after his trial when he was found not guilty and everything.
Yeah.
They made it out to be that he called Fred Hickman saying that he's a free man and everything, and that it never actually happened.
So, I'll read my bit first.
Okay.
But to keep those interested, what are you going to tell us about after mine is done?
Well, after your mystery random story, as I have it listed on our whiteboard here behind the counter, I had mentioned it once before about in the episode 3 with Crown Hill about doing the origins of cemeteries.
Yes.
So that's what I have decided to go on and do this week, because something else I had started, it was just as confusing, if not more, than the birthday origins.
Oh. Is this something that you're going to talk
Yeah.
about at a later time?
Probably, because one of the years I selected for this event, it's kind of difficult to find anything because it was going on at the beginning of World War II and came to a sudden end because of that.
Oh.
So.
Interesting.
And this event, it still goes on today, and a lot of things we don't really think about actually, or their first appearances to the world actually showed up at this worldwide event that would happen through the years.
Oh, okay. Now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay.
And my biggest problem is I keep getting distracted by all the pictures of the buildings from it too, and
You did do that.
Yeah.
You even had to
it's a
show
fucking
me.
tragedy that all these buildings were either torn down or they had burned down at some point.
But not all of them.
Not all of them, and you've been in one of them.
I know. You've told me. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a little sad that the thing isn't there that I had asked you about, though.
I don't remember what that was.
The miniature circus.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the fuck they're replacing that with.
I don't know, but that was like honestly one of my favorite parts in there.
Yeah, considering that was all carved by one person.
Yeah, that was pretty spectacular. Okay, so this week I am going to be telling you and anybody else that's listening about the Battersea Funfair Park disaster that happened in London.
Okay.
Have you ever heard about this?
No.
Never seen anything about this?
Not that I can recall.
Okay, so we'll get started then.
All right.
In London on May 30th, 1972, a wooden roller coaster would come off of its tracks, killing 5 children. 3 of them would die on scene. The other 2 would later die in the hospital, and it would injure 13 other people. Never heard anything about that.
No, but all I can think of is I used to do things like that intentionally on Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Make people fall off make the tracks come off?
Yeah, make the roller coasters intentionally kill people.
Oh,
I mean, it's like playing that in The Sims. If you never took the ladders out of the pools in The Sims, were you really playing The Sims?
I've never played The Sims. Never have. So,
or also within Roller Coaster Tycoon, using the little people grabber to pick people up and dropping them in lakes too. And that was the thing also. That's how I used to get rid of the very most unhappy people in my park, is just drown them. So maybe I have serial killer tendencies.
Well, yeah, most serial killers are fucking Scorpios. Scorpios and Virgos, I think. Libras and Sagittarius.
Oh yeah, the unhappy park guest, I picked them up and I dropped them in the lake that was on the map.
Fucking weirdo.
Better watch out for Dad Watch.
God. Okay. So, the Big Dipper, this is the name of the ride.
The ride sounds familiar, but I think there's one also that named that in Coney Island, I think.
Is there?
Or was. Maybe I'm thinking some other park, but anyhow.
Maybe you're thinking of the Battersea Funfair Park.
Maybe I am after all.
Anyways, the Big Dipper, which would become the Funfair's main attraction,
okay,
was brought to life in 1951 at the Funfair in Battersea Park in London. This opened as a part of the Festival of Britain, which basically was like a national exhibit and fair that had millions of visitors throughout the UK. It celebrated and promoted British's science, technology, industrial design, architecture, and arts.
What is his name again?
The Festival of Britain.
Sounds very similar to the World's Fair would be.
That's why I looked at you the way I did, because that's what it sounded like to me too. Which we'll have to try. We'll have to see if that's part of. I don't think it is, because it didn't say anything about that. You're gonna Google?
Oh, I was going to.
All right, I'm gonna continue talking while you do that. In the middle of the day on Tuesday, May 30th, 1972, the rides were going strong until the Big Dipper would fail and cause an accident. The carriages sitting on the track began to be joisted up to the start of the ride, but they happened to break, and its haulage rope broke, which I'm assuming is the rope that, helped take them up.
This was built in the 1950s?
72. Well, this was built in the 50s, yes.
Okay, which I just find it odd that they're using a rope still to pull the rail cars up the slope when they're, the chain was used for like eons. Even before that, I want to say the chain that they actually used this still was like one of the first things on the count when the in Coney Island when that was first built. I'm all scatterbrained still.
The emergency rollback brake failed as well, causing the carriages to roll back towards the station where they had left. Do you know what a brakeman is?
For a roller coaster or a train?
For a roller coaster.
I'm sure it's just another name for the ride operator.
And and what would in your world, what would the operator do?
Try and stop the train and not make sure it runs by pulling the brake lever that keeps the train in place at the station.
Pretty much. So in this instance, the brakeman was actually a man that would legitimately stand on the back of one of the carriages.
Okay.
On the roller coaster. He would stand there and go through the whole roller coaster. But yes, his job was to stand there and pull the brake in an emergency. And obviously that...
So wait, this guy is operating the roller coaster from the
roller coaster.
And
yes.
This is what, the 1970s?
Yeah.
That's
I have a
bizarre.
picture. I have a picture that will be posted along with this. But yes, it's actually a guy that stood on the back of like behind the first set of seats. He would stand on the back of that holding on.
Which is really bizarre because, you had the piece built in the same time period at Kings Island using the a chain lift hill and, automatic station brakes. And then now here, the guy is being pulled up by a fucking rope and a dude on the back of it.
Yep. Standing on the back,
fuck?
holding on. So yeah, he was responsible for slowing the ride down manually with the lever when it came to like curves or bends, that kind of thing. With the brake failing, the brakeman tried everything to get the coaster to stop and obviously didn't work. Otherwise, this wouldn't be a story that I'm covering.
Right.
Despite every attempt that he made, the train gained speed and the carriage at the back jumped off of the rails and crashed through a barrier. 2 other carriages then crashed on top of the first one. In total, 5 children would die, 13 others would be injured to some degree. And I did try to look up, like, what their injuries were, and there was only one that I could find that had, like, a broken hand.
Maybe a lot of it was just bumps and scrapes and broken bones, but just the reporting of one broken hand.
Yeah.
But it's with these reading just that part alone, it makes me not wonder if that's where roller coasters having more than one set of wheels actually came about after this incident.
I don't know.
Because I don't know how much about roller coaster design yet they actually have 2 sets of wheels, one set on top and one set on bottom to keep the trains on the track. So I'm not wondering if this is the incident that sparked off that safety device, basically.
It could be. So after this accident, precautions got the better of everyone and it was permanently closed and then dismantled. With the closing of Battersea Park's main attraction, the park lost its luster and people quit visiting, causing the park itself to close in 1974. Just 2 years after that accident happened.
Okay.
Like, the whole park was gone. Almost nothing remains of what once was, not even enough to show anyone that a Funfair once was even at that location. Like, they have nothing.
Like, no pillar foundations?
Nothing.
It's all gone?
It's all gone.
Huh.
Yep. In 2015, The Independent, a British online newspaper, published a retelling of the accident. I don't know how to say this lady's last name. I'm gonna
just try the best that you can.
Try and butcher it. Carolyn Adamczyk was a passenger on the ride when the accident happened. She said, "As soon as we started shooting backwards, everything went into slow motion. I turned around and saw the brakeman desperately trying to put the brake on, but it wasn't working. Most of the carriages didn't go around the bend. One detached and one went off the side through a wooden hoarding." I don't know what a hoarding is.
I'm not sure either.
Probably some British word for something else we know.
Oh, I'm sure that's probably what it is. Like cookie as a biscuit over there.
Yeah. She said people were groaning and hanging over the edge. It was awful. The BBC news site published a video in April of 2022 about a campaign started by the survivors of the accident. They want a permanent memorial put where the accident happened because, like I said, there's absolutely nothing there. Like, so, there's concrete,
right,
where some things might have stood, but I mean, there's nothing right. to no memorial to the people that passed away or the people hurt in the accident.
There's like no redevelopment of this land either. It's just empty.
None. And one of the videos that I watched actually showed a couple of the survivors walking through that area. Mm-hmm. And it's just like trees have been, built up and...
So it's just been reclaimed by nature for the most part.
Absolutely. There's nothing there.
And if not knowing what the story, you're just going to stumble across this marker, you're going to be like, huh.
Yeah. So the video shows film footage of the roller coaster while in operation, as well as modern day views of where the coaster once stood. It mentions a theory that the wood destroyed when the accident happened from the roller coaster itself is buried underneath the park. Nobody's actually tried to dig and find any of it.
Right.
But that's just what they say. It's almost as if the place and this event never existed at all. But that could be how they want it. Maybe they don't want a memorial to...
Just let it... I don't know how to put it. What I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, like they I'm assuming it's because they didn't want the negativity of that incident being something that could have been helped.
Right.
You know, if it was, as you say, that Coney Island had better police system and all that, like maybe they were just behind in upgrading their shit and this happened and they're like, we don't want that on us.
Right, because I mean, Cedar Point's open at this time. I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, 1970s is when the Beast came about. It was the world's largest roller coaster for the longest time. It was built in the 70s, so like a lot of the modern day safety practices for roller coasters probably existed at this time.
Right, but it was the Big Dipper was not built in the 70s. It was built in 1951, I think I said.
Okay, so
but by this time, 20 years later, with the advancement of Coney Island and
Cedar Point,
like you would think that they would have upgraded their
it's a possibility, system. But being an ocean apart and safety regulations being different for each country,
and that was the thing. I did find out that they had like damn near no safety precautions, no violations. Like there was just not a thing. Like basically ride at your own risk.
Oh, so it almost sounds like a boomer paradise. Back in my day, we could kill a Tonka truck with a moose kind of thing, Kill a moose with a Tonka truck is what I meant to say.
Kill a Tonka truck with a moose?
Yeah, maybe COVID brain fog still has a hold on my head here.
Oh,
I'm trying to make a funny moment and I fuck it up.
No, it was funny either way. There was a criminal trial tied to this case. There were 3 men charged with manslaughter at Wandsworth Magistrates Court on February 26, 1973.
One of them's not the brakeman, is it?
I'm going to continue reading.
Okay.
The court heard that after a fire damaged the ride in 1970, that instead of rebuilding with brand new, better material, that they spent damn near nothing and bought a lot of secondhand stock to repair. Some of this stock was more than 50 years old and had been brought and used to fix the ride. They said the dog brake, I don't know what that is.
I'm not sure. It's probably just the name they gave it. But the brake itself.
Yeah. So the dog brake on this ride had not operated as it should have when the rope broke, which allowed the carriages to start moving backwards. The structure, which included a walkway for pedestrians, was made unsafe since that wood had rotted out. So when one victim survived the initial impact, the wood broke because of the rot, and she fell through the handrail to her death.
Jeez.
Yeah. The ride's manager and its inspecting engineer were sent to trial. After a long hearing, both men were acquitted on November 20th, 1973. And I don't know why it said 3 men, because it never actually said who the third person was. It was the ride engineer the ride manager and inspecting engineer. Never found out who the third one is.
I'm not wondering if it wasn't the park's owner or something.
Oh, it very well could have been.
I mean, brakeman, he's obviously probably not really... I mean, he could be probably held liable depending on if he's supposed to check the brakes every day, which he probably did. And they work. And okay, we're going to keep going. But, just now knowing he slowly is all these people are relying on him to fucking do this. He's going to do everything that he can to get this shit to fucking stop. Even fucking Flintstone that shit.
And according to some of the people on that ride, he did do everything. Like the lady I was telling you about, that she had turned around and she had seen the brakeman doing everything that he could do, but none of it helped.
Even though knowing you're in a situation you actually have absolutely no fucking control over.
Yes, but that's it.
Yeah. Oh, that was an interesting little tale there.
Like I said, very, very short, but
yeah,
I just found it very interesting. And some of the pictures that I'll send to you to add into the Facebook group post.
Okay.
It looks like they tried to make this place kind of like Disney. I mean, you had different regions of the world within this park, and it looked pretty cool for back in its day.
I'm sure it did. And that's my biggest problem with doing research stuff is I keep getting distracted by pictures of the bygone eras of stuff, like especially all the buildings that have to do with the World's Fair and everything. Mm-hmm. And just because of the massive scale that some of these places were, and then they're like, "Oh, sorry, fire just destroyed it." Lols.
Yeah, that's awful.
Especially the one from London they called the Crystal Palace. That was like just giant fucking greenhouse for the most part.
Yeah.
And then everything else from the 1893 World's Fair, which is of the same time as H.H. Holmes. It's where the term "Devil in the White City" comes from, basically.
Ah.
But yeah, a lot of that, and of course, once fire, fucking destroyed everything, except for maybe one or two buildings that are left. One of them actually is just a ticket booth, but actually somebody's using it as a garden shed when I was looking into it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
But that's a topic for a different time.
Yes, it is.
Let's get into these graves.
These graves.
Let's do
this grave story.
Some necromancy and grave digging.
Grave digging.
And stuff. Let's do it.
Okay. Yes, death is part of life. So, instead of we need to stop shying away from it, we need to be more accepting of it. Like Dr. Jack Kevorkian is one of those death positive, infamous peoples of true crime.
Yep.
Even though people want to say he was a monster until you actually learn his true story, the truth about him. And it's like, holy shit, he makes a great point, and it's just fucking terrible, though, of what happened to him.
Yeah.
With that. But anyhow, no big name stuff other than points of references, right?
But yes, but also, like, the states that have the death with dignity that allow you basically, like, when you're ready,
right?
You call them in, they hand you medicine, and it's on you if you take it or not.
Right.
Like, if you're ready to be done, then you be done.
Yeah, but of course, since the states are doing it, it's okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, before we get in a big ass fucking rant about that shit, you probably heard the term "kick the bucket" or maybe "pushing up daisies." These are two slang terms to use in reference of somebody being killed or somebody's died.
Yeah.
They're woven into our vocabulary, obviously, with that. But also with this month, I had thought about how we both have lost our mothers at this month, and it made me get to thinking also about our previous episode of episode 3 about Crown Hill, is how did cemeteries really get started?
Yes.
So that when I started diving into it, it's actually kind of interesting, and we've been burying people in cemeteries for a lot longer than we think we have been. I want to first start off with you about the term cemetery and graveyard. There's actually a difference, even though it's an interchangeable term.
I know this, and I know the difference.
I know you know the difference about this, but maybe some of our listeners don't know there's an actual difference.
Fun fact. My niece did not know that the first time I went up and picked her up and drove her down here. We were driving past one, and I asked her if she knew the difference, and she did not know that there was a difference, so I explained it to her. Yeah.
And she actually had to explain it to her without her being completely lost?
Yeah. Yep.
So anyhow, I guess we both are thinking about the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
So, even though they are interchangeable to these days, there's actually a difference between the two. But the word cemetery that I just mentioned, and also I might have mentioned this in episode 3, it comes from the Greek word of comaterium, meaning bedroom or sleeping place. Cemeteries are also a designated land plot for burial grounds with a non-religious affiliation, so state-owned, county-owned, whatever, as you would want to call it. But whereas graveyards are on the grounds of a church with inside the stone with the perimeter walls, possibly, but more modern day things, fences aren't really used for a lot of stuff, but and also have the religious undertones for burials there and everything. So generally, like, if you die from a suicide, you won't be buried in a graveyard.
Right.
But there's also another term, is also called a necropolis.
Necropolis?
Yes.
Okay.
The necropolis is actually a very large cemetery, which you're also known as the cities of the dead, basically. One of the very first known cemeteries in the world is in Taflorak Cave in northern Morocco. Is believed to be the world's oldest cemetery to date, where they have found the remains of at least 34 people at this time. This cave was first discovered in 1908 and was named after the village nearby of Talflorat, but this cave is also known as the Pigeon Cave too, but I could not find origins of why it's called the Pigeon Cave.
Okay.
And during this excavation from 1908, the first remains wouldn't be found until 1951. Archaeologists believe that they were put here to rest anywhere between 14,000 and 15,000 years ago.
That's quite a while ago.
Mm-hmm. Even though through time, man has been burying our dead in various ways, this could be like the cave that I had just mentioned during the Bronze and Iron Ages. There was also a practice of what they called grave fields was done. Grave fields were often small with maybe 5 or less graves, and they didn't use markers like we do today. This was more than likely to indicate there was a homestead or a family plot than this small grave field. Some of the largest grave fields that have been found are located in Germany. The Saschbach grave field has over 2,000 graves in it, and the Mengen field has over 1,000 in it, and these are both in Germany.
And these were like original, like one of the first cemeteries found.
Yeah, but these grave fields, they didn't use markers like we do now, or when they started
using...
So
they just found bodies and
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, like kind of like family homesteads, and one of the weird graves that I'm going to close this out with is kind of similar to this, but they actually had headstones. Cemeteries and graveyards didn't really take their shape as we know them now until about the Middle Ages. Starting in the 7th century, burials in Europe were in the control of the church. Go figure, right?
Yeah.
And took place on consecrated church grounds where bodies were either buried in a mass grave or a crypt underneath the church if they were of a higher social status, like nobles, lords, kings, and queens, and the statuses, social status of those nature.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about mass graves is that I had always thought to the past is that, like in Monty Python, bring out your dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just picking them up, chucking them in a hole, burying them, and they're forgetting it. They're actually not doing this from what I found out. What they're actually doing is they're doing a mass decomposition in a mass grave.
Oh, so okay. I figured mass grave would also be just chucking bodies into a hole till it was full.
I just figured that's what it was, is that like, all these paupers and, peasants don't mean shit, so just chucking them in a hole to be buried and be forgotten. I mean... So it is not that? No.
Good. Okay.
So, I mean, there's a possibility. There was probably during war times that was probably the case, but... So after, the decomposition of all your organic material, your blood, your flesh, your organs, things like that, your bones would actually be dug back up, or exhumed, is the correct technical term for it, and your bones would be placed and called it either in a box or a building called an ossuary.
Okay.
Ossuary boxes are typically made from stone. Some were made from metal. Either they can be, depending through time and history, stone or metal. Sometimes they'd just be a plain box. Or, of course, if you could afford it, it'd be an ornate box as well, too. And then after your bones are placed in what these ossuary boxes are, then they would either be bound into the walls of the cemetery or within the floor slabs of the church or behind the church walls as well, too.
Is this the picture that you showed me the other day? Yesterday? Yes,
this is one of the pictures I showed you of an ossuary in Milan, I think I told you it was.
Yep.
But those bones weren't in the box, obviously. They're just boop, right in the fucking wall.
Gotcha.
For the most part. And yes, I'll be sharing this picture.
Yeah, because it's really cool looking. I'm like, that's a sweet looking library. Wait a minute. That is not a library.
Actually, the Paris Catacombs is considered the world's largest ossuary with an estimated 6 million remains that they have found in the Paris Catacombs. And there's still more, but some areas are so dangerous they won't even attempt the risk to entering them.
Dangerous as in like they could crumble at any point?
Yeah, that
okay.
They're not structurally sound.
Gotcha.
Things like, and it's a possibility, flooded out. Yeah. They don't want to disturb history too much. But if you were of a higher nobility, like I said before, you would be probably buried in individual crypts inside your church of worship, and you'd have the information of your name, your date of death, your birth date on it, and other facts about your life. This is usually depicted with the coat of arms that you see lots of pictures of. Buried in a graveyard as well, and if you could afford it, being in your social status, you probably had a stonemason for a headstone, which they would also engrave your headstone like they commonly are today.
Mm-hmm.
For those that couldn't pay for a headstone, would typically have the common wooden cross we see for pets and memorials along the highway, where they indicate, somebody's parish, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, these wooden crosses would originally be used at first to mark a grave, but sometimes families would be able to, scrounge up enough money to make a cross made out of iron later on, because these crosses would deteriorate over time.
The wood ones, yeah.
Also, the richer families, being wealthy, they had to flaunt their wealth, even in death, by adding statues of similar to weeping angels or larger crosses or obelisks or pillars and shit like that you see now. It wouldn't be until the Victorian period where
of course,
modern cemeteries start taking their shape. Imagine that. That's when it happens. If this is one of our first episodes that you've listened to, we've had this ongoing joke about the Victorian period, because every time we've looked into a subject matter, it has popped up in one way or the other.
Yeah, every single story.
With this rapid population growth during the Industrial Revolution during the Victorian period, London's population would explode from 1 million to 2.3 million by 1851. And to give you perspective, I have drawn up this map, how big of a boom in 50 years this was. I looked up the population density for London, England during this time, and the population density of London was 4,266 per square mile.
That's insane.
So over 4,000 people are living in a square mile of space. So I drawn out this map and how big of a space people are actually, and how many people are living in the space. I'm sure you probably seen me drawing around on this map and was curious on what the hell it was for.
Yeah.
So the map you're looking at right now, Sarah, this is an area of where we live and all the stores around us, and the area that's marked in green equals out to be 1 square mile worth of space, and there's approximately about 4,000 people living in that space.
But that's insane. That is an insane amount of people for that area.
No, I know.
Yeah, I don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah, it's somebody sitting on somebody's lap.
Ooh.
And somebody sitting on their lap, and someone sitting on their lap.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah. With this population growth, you would also need to put the spaces for the dead. And also the church graveyards in London are starting to fill very quickly because of this.
Well, yeah, you got
4,000.
You got 85 people sitting on your lap. Like, you're gonna quit breathing eventually.
Well, yeah. But because at this time you're having multiple epidemics of cholera, TB, the flu in general, people are just constantly fucking sick, because with these only places to be buried in urban centers is your graveyard at your church. The problem is those bodies need time to decompose. Where's all that matter going? It's going into the ground. Where's the water come from? The water table under the ground. So everyone is getting sick from these bodies being decomposed, these decomposing bodies.
Oh, nasty.
And cholera was one of the biggest outbreaks that happened, and I'll get into that in a minute. But at this time, it was a common practice for them to dig up graves and reuse them because of limited space. And people were just buried in cloth instead of a casket, unless you could afford one, obviously.
Buried in cloth, like...
Just regular ass, canvas cloth sheet.
Like burlap or something?
It couldn't find, it just said cloth. In the specify, okay. It would be
so they would just be wrapped in the cloth and immediately put into the earth. Okay.
But if you could afford it in this time, your coffin was more than likely dug back up and broken up and used for firewood, as long as with your bones would be burned and ground up to be used as fertilizer, or they could have been possibly placed in the ossuary inside the church. And another practice, which is very taboo to today's standards, is that the fresher bodies would more than likely be chopped up to help speed up the decomposition process. They try and process as many bodies as they had to do. So the smaller something is, the less time it's going to take. So with the space being an issue as of putting the dead, and medical knowledge not being as what it is today, Every time they were digging up these bodies, they were also releasing the bacteria and fungi that causes illnesses.
Yeah.
So the decaying matter that was also seeping into the water supply was causing epidemics like cholera, like I mentioned earlier.
Right.
And the cholera epidemics in this time period were quite deadly. 1831 in the United Kingdom, in its entirety, cholera would kill 51,000 people. 7,000 of these deaths alone were in the city of London.
Okay, so compared to like one of our surrounding cities, like how big would you compare London?
So the 51,000, this was for the entire country. 7,000 people was in London alone.
Okay.
So where we live now probably is pretty close to this entire number.
Okay.
By 1832, Parliament would understand how much of a huge safety concern this is for the citizens of London, so they would establish a new law that would create 7 large municipal-owned cemeteries outside the city limits of London, and they would also close off any further burials inside the church graveyards.
Okay.
And this is basically where our modern cemetery design comes from. These 7 cemeteries would follow what's called a rural or garden design, but there's actually like 7 different styles of cemetery design, but I'm only going over the 3 or 4 that were most commonly we see here in the United States.
Okay.
The rural or garden cemeteries can also be found inside the city limits, but fully landscaped with planting of flowers and trees, along with bushes, and have a perimeter fence as well. So, for example, Crown Hill that I covered in episode 3 would be one of these garden/rural designs. They are commonly found on the outskirts because the land would be a lot cheaper to acquire in the country when building these cemeteries. But with the cost that came with these garden cemeteries, only the rich could afford to be buried in them.
Well, of course.
I'm sure you are curious on what an urban cemetery would be, since I just covered what a rural cemetery is.
Yeah.
This would be your church graveyards for the most part.
And they call that rural cemetery?
The church graveyards would be your urban because they're they're inside the city limits already established and everything. What we see commonly here, other than the garden style, would also be a lawn and a lawn beam design, which they're basically the same thing with a very small difference.
Okay.
So I'm just putting them both together because it's the same fucking thing for the most part. Starting with lawn style, because that's basically the foundation for the other. This is more likely you would be buried if you couldn't afford to be buried in the garden or rural style. The lawn style is very flat, and all the markers are just below ground level, so the mowers won't hit them when they go to mow.
Okay.
Going to Mishawaka, sometimes we pass one where you see no headstones. That's your lawn style cemetery.
Okay, that makes sense.
Decorations are usually prohibited inside these lawn style cemeteries because of mowing. They're going to be in the way. So they're generally removed by groundskeepers, and of course families are not going to be too thrilled about that. But it's in, on the sign when you come in, so
yeah,
you fucked around and you found out for the most part. Better way to put it. These lawn style cemeteries, they are still decorated with trees and bushes, but they're put more into a smaller gardens type of setting on the perimeter, or maybe in the center. This type of design would become more popular during and after World War II. Now the lawn beam cemetery, it's the same thing, but this is most commonly what you think of when you hear the term cemetery, where the headstone is above ground and adjacent to the grave for mowers still to get in between.
Okay.
So this is that is the most common style of cemetery you see in the United States, but much older ones like Crown Hill is more likely the garden style because the way that place is landscaped.
Yeah, they definitely mapped that out.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to originally finish this up with the meaning of symbols on headstones, but it's a list of 50 plus different meanings for each thing. It's
damn.
like 50 different symbols, but there's like 2 to 3 different things for each one, and I'm not going to sit here and read through all
So
that.
depending on whoever buried the person that's there, they chose what that symbolism was for.
Yeah, because sources were all over the place with that. Because like I know one of the things you were most interested about was the tree stump
Yes.
ones, and it basically was part of the Victorian period as a movement of funerary art to get away from the giant obelisks and the mausoleums and stuff like that to try and simplify things.
Didn't you say that was like for like family burials? It's basically
yes,
like the
because
family
like
tree.
if you see, it's basically what they were trying to symbolize it off of. It was the family tree of
Okay.
as a tree grows from an acorn, the family grows as well too. So that they would have like what you would say is a shored off branch, where it's cut down to the trunk, would symbol like depending on how many branch shords there were, that's how many family members are supposed to be buried there.
Oh.
And they would also become synonymous with a organization called the Woodsmen of America, and eventually become known as Woodsmen of the World. They were a order, almost like a fraternal order, like the Elks or the Eagles,
Okay.
to supply insurance for the working man in case he was killed, on the job, and there was financial support for his family afterwards.
Yeah.
They would offer a tree-themed headstone free of charge when they first originally would become this organization, and but over time, if I remember correctly, in the 1920s, they would put in $100 towards your tree-themed headstone if you put their organization logo on the tree stump.
Branding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the most part, sponsorship, basically.
Yeah.
So people were sellouts since the fucking 1800s. One of the things that was a symbolism between this tree stone and the broken pillar is that if it's at an angle, it's supposed to be a meaning of a life cut short. If it's a 3 stacked logs, it's the meaning of it's a child's grave. And there was one picture I did find of an entire family plot that's marked out with fallen, like, full-size logs cut from stone.
Oh, damn.
Like, you've seen some family plots where it's got a marked out perimeter and everything. Like, their perimeter was marked out in tree stone.
Wow.
I can only imagine the wealth of that family at this time to have that.
Yeah.
So with that one little fun fact out of the way, I need to make a fucking intro to fun facts for us.
You do.
Because we keep saying it that way every episode when we use that term, fun facts. So starting off my fun fact here section is, did you know that Sears and Montgomery Ward sold tombstones?
I did not.
Yes. So,
But I do know the little thing about Walmart. Did you put that in there?
no, I did not.
Oh yeah, Walmart. You can buy caskets on
Oh,
Walmart.com.
you can buy anything off the internet anymore. You can get those on
From
Amazon.
Walmart though.
You can buy caskets on Amazon. Remember?
But that's Amazon. They're there for everything.
Yeah, remember when we used to
From
listen?
dildos to caskets.
Yeah. I don't think that's what they meant by A to Z, but anyhow.
Oh.
Yeah, Sears and Roebuck would actually take on the traditional funeral parlor with their tombstones and monuments mailer, and they would advertise it as a catalog of memorial art in granite and marble. Their prices would actually come close to beating out normal funeral parlor prices, allowing more people to participate in a custom ordering of headstones, which was usually for the wealthy and the elite during this time. Sears would advertise this as prices within the reach of your pocketbook and in designs heretofore possible to only the wealthy. Sears would offer simple white granite markers for as low as $8.60, but of course I went into that fancy dancy
Inflation calculator.
that I got, and it comes out to be $284.77.
Which is still very, very cheap for a headstone. So these
Right.
must have been very small.
Oh, in this ads they had the dimensions. The articles I read didn't have dimensions. They just, of course, just said small. They would offer much larger headstones starting at $113 or just over $3,700. Sears would sell these much larger stones cut from the granite as from the best quarries from the Berry Mountains of Vermont, and also white Rutland Italian marble with the best developed strata veins of the Rutland district of Vermont. They would even send sample pieces to you for 75 cents, equaling up to $24 today.
Are you done with that little piece?
No, I'm not yet.
Okay, so when you're done, I have a question.
Okay. Their competitor, Montgomery Ward, would join in on this during the 1920s, but by 1952, Sears and Montgomery Ward would stop offering tombstones by mail.
I mean, yeah. Okay, is this the thing that you posted in the Dark Windows podcast group for Kevin? To be like,
the Kevin's just be like, huh, no shit. Yeah.
I know something that you may not know.
Right.
Okay, I mean, that was that part, right?
Because when I was reading it, it was like, maybe they don't really give too much thought about it, seeing the stone quarries and whatnot. Yeah, I kind of turned a little bit stalkerish, I guess you could say. But that technically, I have one of the Kevin's addresses anyhow.
Which one is it? Also, if you haven't watched Dark Windows, or listened to it rather, go do that.
Yeah. There's another little fun thing from the same region as well, too, that I found out. The headstones like they use in the national cemeteries like Arlington or Great Lakes that we visited more than once come from Barrie, Vermont as well, too.
Oh, really?
For the last 20 years, they came from the quarries of Barrie, Vermont.
Ah, so quite possibly the ones that we saw in the Great Lakes National Cemetery came from there. Yeah,
they've been supplying them for the last 20 years or so pretty sure.
Sorry, we have really rambunctious shop kitties today. Yeah, Salem. If you can hear them running around and meowing and just being stupid.
Yeah, I'm sure Salem's probably going to fucking break something again.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Right.
And Lugosi is trying to climb the counter, but he looks like he may fail.
No.
Okay, he walked away.
Are you fucking done yet, guy?
Nope.
6 feet deep for a grave has multiple different origins as well. One of the theories is that during the plagues of the 1660s, the Lord Mayor of London ordered all graves to be at least 6 feet deep to slow the spread of disease. Along with the slowing of the spread of the disease, it also was to believe to keep animals from digging up bodies. But with modern cadaver dogs, this is clearly not the case because they can smell human remains at least 6 feet deep or farther down.
Yeah.
It's also believed that burying bodies at 6 feet deep was also to help to deter grave robbers from stealing valuables and also to keep medical students from digging up bodies for use for medical studies.
Like, extracting zydrate and...
No, could be.
Maybe.
With low glass vials.
Yeah.
And I'm sure someone's like, what the fuck are they talking about? And then there's
my favorite one. Well, one of my favorite.
That, and movies. I'm sure somebody else is probably singing the song along.
Hydrate comes in a little glass vial.
A little glass vial.
A little glass vial.
And I've only ever watched it the one time, and how the fuck can I remember that?
I love that song.
The best part
that
of
whole movie.
The best part is when
Paris Hilton's face falls right the fuck off.
Yeah. And so to finish the next part, our little fun facts, there's a couple different very unique headstones that I found during the researching this.
Okay.
In Wellesley, Ontario, Dr. Samuel Bean would bury his 2 wives, whom he had at different times, side by side with a crossword tombstone. He died at sea falling off of a ship heading to Cuba before he could tell anyone how to read his cryptic headstone for his 2 wives. In the 1970s, a 94-year-old woman would actually crack the code, and to read it, you would have to start with the 7th character on the 7th row down, reading in a spiral fashion. And they actually did put it in how it is actually read. In memoriam, Henrietta, first wife of S. Bean, M.D., who died 27th September 1865, aged 23 years, 2 months, and 17 days. And Susanna, his second wife, who died the 27th April 1867, age 26, 10 months and 15 days. 2 better wives, 1 man never had. They were gifts from God, but are now in heaven. May God help me, SB, to meet them there.
Huh. That's cute.
Yeah. So I'll be posting a picture of the headstone. In Savannah, Georgia, you will find the graves of Richard and Catherine Dotson in the middle of runway 10 for Savannah International Airport. During World War II, the airport needed to extend its runway, but came across a cemetery holding close to about 100 graves. The family refused to move Richard and Catherine, but they did move the rest of the remains that they did find. But since it is illegal to move graves without the surviving family's consent, they were incorporated into the runway, which can still be seen on the tarmac runway now when you Google pictures for it.
That's crazy. Is it still a used runway?
Yeah, it's a still very active airport.
So you could just be like, you know, what do they call it? Taxiing down the lane.
Coming in for your final approach.
And then you see these 2 headstones. You're like, shit. Hopefully this isn't like an omen that they died right here because, you know, their fucking pilot sucked.
There is a very unique lawn-style cemetery in the Wasson Cemetery in France. There are actually 5 burial plots for American servicemen of World War I, labeled A, B, C, and D. E is not even on a map, but is the 5th one. This is known as the House of Shame.
Why?
The House of Shame is a plot holding the remains of 98 dishonorably discharged United States soldiers that committed war crimes during World War II. These dishonored dead crimes were anywhere from rape, murder, and desertion. This plot is hidden from public view, and like I said, it's not marked on any map. They discourage public entrance to this area because of them deserting the United States military and being committed to war crimes. The only way you can access this plot is through the groundskeeper office, or, you know, weasel your way through the hedges, which you're probably going to get more trouble doing that.
All right.
And there's no names on any of these plaques that are in this plot of land. There's only a number on it, and that's it. And also, no United States flag is allowed to be flown over this plot, and they actually have the backs of these plot markers have their backs turned to the west, having their back towards the U.S. flag.
Oh, okay then.
And a symbolism of them turning their back on their country for the most part.
So their country turned their back on them.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
In Irwin, Pennsylvania, World War II veteran, in a more positive way of mentioning World War II now. This veteran by the name of George Swanson loved his car so much that he'd actually be buried in it. Swanson would actually buy up multiple plots around his original one that he purchased for him and his wife in Brush Creek Cemetery, his white 1984 Corvette. When Swanson passed in 1994, he would be cremated, and his urn would be buckled into the driver's seat with the song "Release Me" from Engelbert Humperdinck playing on the tape deck as his car was lowered into the ground.
Oh my goodness.
Even with the safety concern for health and safety for visiting family members and his neighbors, as they would say, they actually did drain all the fluids from the vehicle. So,
I would hope so.
Yeah, I would just be curious to see what the condition of that car looks like now, being in the ground for almost 30 years now, 20 years now.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been crushed at least a little bit.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, depending. They just said he was buried. I'm assuming that he had to have a custom vault made for it too.
Probably.
But then again, he was cremated, so you don't have to worry about embalming fluids and things.
Well, I don't know, because there's been a picture that I've seen of an old man that got buried on his Harley. Mm-hmm. And they had... sorry. They had just, like, him sitting on the motorcycle. Mm-hmm. And his... encasement basically was like super thick plexiglass.
Same picture as well, but I'm not wondering if it wasn't put in a vault as well too.
I don't know.
So I'm sure probably a lot of us has seen the pictures of this one. It's in Lynette, Alabama. You will find the dollhouse grave of little Nadine Earls. She would die on December 18th, 1933, just days before Christmas, and her only wish that year was to have a dollhouse. And her father was busy working on trying to get her this dollhouse when she died. Couldn't find out what she had died from, but her parents made sure that her Christmas wish that year was still granted even in death. The original house was made from wood, but when she was moved to the family plot so she wouldn't be alone, they rebuilt her dollhouse grave out of brick, and is complete with windows, striped awnings, even a mailbox. They would plant flowers during the summer and decorate it with a Christmas wreath and lights during the winter months. Her parents would fill the dollhouse up with toys and dolls up until their death, and then the city of Lynette still carries on the updating of toys and the upkeep of her grave of little Nadine to this day still.
Aww.
And to finish this out, I do have some more little phrases and that some of their origins for the meaning of death or to be killed for the most part.
Okay.
And the very last one I found the most interesting, so that's why I made it last.
Okay.
Wearing a pint overcoat would be used by American gangsters.
Okay.
The charity organization, the Salvation Army, would use the phrase promoted to glory when one of their members has passed on. That is a doornail would be used by Charles Dickens in A Christmas Carol for the first time ever. It's also believed that cowboys would use the phrase went for a Texas cakewalk when somebody was hanged.
I've never heard that, but that's awesome.
Hobos in their own language, they would use hop on the last rattler as a way, the meaning of death. Rattler being a train like in the Polar Express, the hobo that's on the top,
Okay, yeah.
talking about,
Yep.
you know, about how long he's been riding this rattler. He's talking about the train itself.
Okay.
Sleeping with the fishes would become popularized by The Godfather. When losing a pet, you would say they crossed the Rainbow Bridge. In 19th century England, once again,
Yay.
you know, we gotta have.
Victorian.
This said that they used the term "pop one's clogs," which means, yeah, I was like, what the fuck? Clogs are a very popular shoe at this time, and they were probably the most valuable thing that you owned also. So when pop one's clogs means is that a working man would tell his family to might possibly take all of his clothes and belongings to a pawn shop to pay for his funeral. The term bite the dust is more likely to become most popular with Queen's hit of the same name. Oh, with Queen, another one bites the dust.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this one the most interesting. In Australian, with the perception of how toxic American food can be with all of our preservatives and whatnot we put in them, you can say that you have eaten a Twinkie when somebody's passed it away.
Eating a Twinkie.
Eating a Twinkie.
But what does that mean?
I guess it's in a wordplay of how toxic American food can be because of all the preservatives and other toxic chemicals that we find in the food.
So they're saying our food is so bad that it killed them?
We know that it is.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying that's basically what they're saying.
It's, you know, it's its perception on how toxic our food can be here in the United States, you know.
That's strange.
So yeah, that's a little bit about cemeteries and I guess some fun facts on, you know, death for the most part.
Gotta love fun facts about death.
Yeah. I mean, some people are like, ooh, super ick. We're going to not talk about that. It's something that we all need to stop shying away from.
I mean, don't fear the Reaper, right?
Right. Even though if you need more cowbell.
Right. Anyways.
So.
That was very interesting. I didn't know that much about cemeteries.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I didn't know, I knew the difference between a cemetery and a graveyard, but I didn't know that there were so many types of cemetery, which seem all kind of dependent on their layout and what's added to them or not added to them.
Right. It's like, and a monument graveyard is like the one that you find mostly in New Orleans.
Okay.
And because in New Orleans is what the monument one is because them being below sea level, you can't bury the dead because their bodies are going to pop up once that area floods back out.
I know. I want to visit those so
Oh, I'm
bad.
sure you do.
So bad.
I just want to see how big that pyramid one that Nicolas Cage has already pre-built in New Orleans.
Yeah. We ever go to New Orleans, I want to go to the cemetery that Anne Rice is buried in.
No, I figured that'd be the case. And
no, but like the plantation that Interview with the Vampire was filmed at is down there. Like, there's a lot of things down there that I would love to go
I'm sure
and see.
there's a whole lot of things there, like same with Salem as well too.
Yes.
I don't know, maybe now we're gonna start becoming more of a tourist and go visiting these huge giant cemeteries to see some of the more unique graves.
I would love to. I would fucking love to go to the Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
No.
Like, that's bucket list.
Right.
Very morbid bucket list, but that's I would absolutely love to go.
Because we don't do normal things in this house.
No, we don't.
Store, or whatever you want to say.
We never have.
We never do normal things inside the store.
No.
Because, I mean, it's called the Macabre Emporium for a reason.
It is.
I don't know about you, Sarah, but I'm thinking it might be time to close up the Emporium for today.
I agree.
So with that said...
remember to creep it real.
Okay, bye!
Bye. Adios. Bichachos. No, you're going to cut the last part.
Oh, adios. And there was another term, was the big adios.
What?
The big adios was another slang term, but there was no origin listed.
Huh.
All right, anyway, bye!
Bye! Our website is live. Make sure you check it out at macabreemporiumpodcast.com. And join our Facebook group and follow us on Twitter at Macabre Emporium. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube at Macabre Emporium Podcast. And if you have any stories of the paranormal, true crime, whether it be local or a story you may have heard, weird history you want us to look into and possibly do an episode on or include within an episode, email us at macabreemporiumpod@gmail.com. And remember to follow, rate, review, and share wherever and whenever you can to help us grow our little baby podcast.
So, with that said, I think it might be time we close up the Emporium for today, Sarah.
I agree.
I agree. Let's do that again.
Okay.